Hello everybody, you're all very welcome to episode 3 of Notions and Promotions. My name is Keith Carroll, I'm your host, as always. I cannot believe we're already on episode 3, it's crazy. We're recording this at the end of November, so coming into silly season. And lots has happened actually at Engaged People since we last had our previous episode, or whatever way that's supposed to come out. We've moved to our new offices just off Stephen's Green on Hume Street. We've launched our executive search division. And we've also launched our property division. So lots of exciting things happening this year and into 2026. I mentioned silly season. Christmas is coming. Our guest this week, or this episode, is Noelle White. Noelle, a lovely Christmassy name. She's managing director at Waystone. She has an excellent story to tell. I've known Noelle a little bit now. I know her story. She is a woman that when she puts her mind to something, she gets the results and she gets it done. So I hope that comes across in today's conversation. So yeah, without further ado, I'll sit back now, let you relax and enjoy the conversation between myself and Noelle White of Waystone. Noelle, you're very welcome to Notions and Promotions.
Thank you very much.
How are you feeling today?
Good.
Are you nervous?
Yes, always.
Is this your first podcast?
Yes.
Be the first of many. I'm delighted to have you on. I've loads I want to talk to you about, absolutely loads. You have an amazing career that I definitely want to dive into, but I want to go right back to the beginning if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I grew up in Ballybrack in County Dublin. As I always say, I'm born and raised Dub. I'm an only child. Come obviously from a very small family in that way, but I've a much bigger, wider family. So both my parents came from families of 13.
Wow.
So I've huge amount of cousins and a huge wider family and support kind of system around me, really. So people always ask me, did I ever feel lonely growing up as an only child? Or a lot of people are quite surprised. Actually, I'm only a child because I'm very loud and very extroverted when I come into places. I'm actually quite an introvert at heart. But it's probably I was always part of that bigger family unit with my parents' families. So I was always around for the noise and everything. So that kind of helped me feel less lonely, I suppose, in a way, and probably helped a lot of my networking skills. Because you had to be a loud voice to be heard in the house. Grew up in Ballybrack. Went to school locally. Did my leaving cert in St. Lawrence College in Loughlinstown. Didn't get the points I wanted the first time around. I was devastated.
What did you want to do?
I always wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
I did my work experience in fourth year in a solicitor's office, and I knew from the moment I was there, I loved everything about it. Loved everything about the law. I was always into criminal books and probably TV shows and everything like that. So yeah, I was always focused on the law, I suppose, in a way. I always wanted to study law, and it just didn't come together. I don't know what, it's hard to really explain. It's very strange, and looking back now, it's like I didn't know how to study or how to prepare for the leaving cert. And there's a lot going on in your life at that stage as well. Like, your life is transitioning, you're finding relationships and friendships, and you're going out for the first time. And I didn't really drink then either. So yeah, it was just, everybody was starting to go out and find their lives, really. And I just was always quite academic. So I just thought, it'll naturally sort itself out. And I applied myself, but in hindsight, I didn't apply myself enough. And then when I got the results, I was devastated. And I didn't do particularly bad. Like, by comparison, I done quite well, but I didn't get what I wanted. And I think that was the first point in my life where it's not that I felt such disappointment. It was disappointment in myself because I knew I could do better. And it was the first point where I really got a kick that said, you need to pull yourself together, and you could have done this better. And it was a kind of a moment when I sat down with my mum and I said, listen, I think I'm going to do this again. And she was like, absolutely not. Jesus, we couldn't take another year of that in the house. Like, we've all been on eggshells, And I said, no, I really think, like, if I settle for a course that I had been offered at the time, I don't think I'll be happy, and I'll always regret not just taking that year. And I said, you know, for the sake of a year, like, you could just see what happens. And at least then I'll know.
Yeah.
And then I can put that to bed and we can move on. But it's the not knowing that you're just like, no, I needed to do it for myself. And luckily, the school that I attended, St. Lawrence's, they ran what they call a 7th year or repeat leaving cert program. So we were quite familiar with it. You know, we'd seen the 7th years every year when we were in school. So it wasn't that it was a mystery to me as to what happens, but it was definitely a point where I really grew up and copped myself on a bit. You know, I went into the repeat year and I really applied myself, and I learned how to study properly and how to ingest information and how to properly apply it, that I hadn't really done for the years before. And it's like I had the same teachers, so it's not like anything was greatly different. I just applied myself better.
And where do you think that change came from? Was that just a fact of growing up, you were a bit more mature, or was there a trigger point where like, I need to apply myself now and knuckle down and get the points?
Yeah, I think that was it. I think it was just because I had floated along and I'd always done quite well academically, that I'd taken it for granted that it would just come easy to me. And then it didn't. And it was that realization of, oh, you actually have to work to get this. Like, you know, you need to work harder. And that there was more in the engine. Maybe I've been traveling in 3rd gear.
Okay.
And I realized then I could go up a gear here and actually really apply myself and do very well. And I did. You know, 7th year was tough. I worked hard. I had a part-time job and I really applied myself, and I took a step back from my social life. And you have to do that, you know. And it changed about, what was nice was there was a couple of friends that went in with me, but I socialized with all these new people. Everyone was in the same situation of trying to get the points and work hard and get the course they wanted. So we were all on the same wave kind of academically, and you were challenged with really smart people. Like, there was people in my class who wanted to be doctors. You know, there were really, really smart people there, and they challenged me academically as well to come up a grade, because I'm always quite competitive. So, you know, we're doing essays every week or tests every week, and someone beside me is getting, you know, an A2 and I'm getting an A3 or whatever it was, a B1 at the time. I was like, okay, I have to do better next week, you know, that kind of way. I'd always have to try and meet them. So that was good for me. And then I got the course I wanted, which was fantastic. Which
and what was that?
Business and law in UCD.
Okay, perfect.
And again, went in there, knew nobody, and it was the best thing for me. I knew absolutely nobody, met loads of great people, and again was meeting people that challenged me academically, and it did me the world of good, and it really helped me apply myself and explore myself as an adult. And I always say this to people when they ask me, you know, were your school days the best, or what was the best for you? I always say college was probably the best thing for me. And it's not for everybody. It really isn't. You know, I hate this thing that people feel like that they have to go, you know, straight to university because it's the obvious thing to do. And then they end up in classes of 300 and 400 people and they get completely lost because they might suit a smaller environment better. So, you know, maybe I always knew, like, I knew the course that I wanted to do. I had really looked into it. I saw that the classes were actually quite small. There were 130 at the most. So I wasn't in these big lecture theatres, and I knew that it would work for me. But I know a lot of people that dropped out of university because it just wasn't for them. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, you know.
No, I would agree. Actually, we work with a lot of clients that engage people where they want the experience. It's less about the education. It's more about what have you done from your work perspective. This is why I should give you the job. So and we have some candidates, and I know some people close to me actually that would have a hang up about not going to university. Yeah. And it's hard for them to hear, but easy for me to say. It's not about the education, it's about the experience. But sometimes, you know, people, they have a proper hang up about not going to 3rd level.
And it you know, sometimes it's that thing. It's like me saying about repeating the leaving cert. It's that hang up I had of, oh, but what if? And sometimes they have to see it to realise you never needed to do this. You know, some people are actually suited going straight into, you know, an apprenticeship or working in a bank at a very low, you know, level and building their way up, working on the job. Some people learn better than that than they do out of a book in a university theatre. And you know, it's just about how you learn, and you need to figure that out. So yeah, that's kind of where
Yeah.
I transitioned to, and I, you know, really enjoyed university. It was probably the best experience. Traveled as much as I could every summer. I had a job at the time. I worked for a bookmakers.
Okay.
I managed some of their shops, and that was my weekend job. And it was great because it was actually the first experience I got in a world where you negotiate to get benefits. So I had a great boss at the time, my supervisor, and she would always say to me, you know, can you use up one of your, like, we get reading weeks during the year in college, and one of them was always, it was always our reading week before exams, always coincided with Cheltenham races.
Okay.
So she would say to me, you know, can you give up your study week? I need you to work the full week in
Yeah.
the shop.
Yeah.
We're going to be out the door, so busy. But I'd say to her, well, then what can you do for me? Like, you know, and she'd be like, well, what do you need? And I'd say, I want 6 weeks off in the summer. You know, I want to go traveling to South America or Europe or whatever. And I'd say to her, like, I'll take off odd weeks of college, and do the weeks in the
Yeah.
shop that
Yeah.
she needed, or I'd work the extra hours during the week that she needed, if she'd give me the extra time off and hold my job, because she obviously needed me during
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
summer,
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'd do a trade off, and it always worked out that way, and that worked really well for me because I got to do the travel I wanted, I got to hold down the job I needed, and you know, I still got to study, you know, as much as I could.
Very
So
good.
it kind of, it worked itself out, but it was an early
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
into how to negotiate to get what you need, you know.
And I bet you're able to use that in your career going forward. And I do want to, you have an amazing career, Noelle, that I want to touch on. I just want to go back very briefly and just spend my last question on your educational piece.
Yep.
In terms of the switch that went off in you from sixth year to repeat and that work ethic that snuck in, did that regress somewhat as you went through? Most people, when they're going to college, you know, they're out with their friends, they're drinking every evening, maybe work can take a back seat, or college work could take a back seat. Did you find you pushed through at college, or were you able to let it go? And I don't want to say live a little, but like,
yeah,
how
no,
did that?
it's a really good point. Because first year in college, you're obviously exploring, and it's not that your results don't matter. They do, because you want to, you know,
Yeah.
stay on your A game, but they're not part of your final grade. I had a 4-year course, so we knew third and fourth year count towards your final grade. So second year kind of snuck in there, and you know, you've gone through the first year nerves, you've met your friends, you've made your groups, and then you knew you kind of had a bit of leeway till third year. So second year was a bit more playtime.
Yeah.
And I probably did take the foot off the gas a little bit in second year, and probably enjoyed myself maybe a bit too much. And then, you know, the results they were good, but they could have been better. And I had that moment of, you're on a slope here now. If you keep going in the direction you're going to end up back where you were,
Yeah.
you know, 2-3 years ago, and you're going to end up having to do repeats. You don't want that. You want to enjoy your summer. So, and you also, you want your final grades to
Yeah.
be good. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's going towards a job. So I had that moment of, right, I have to pull up my socks now. Third and fourth year, really apply myself, start getting on the exam notes early. And it was that exact moment that I'd had post leaving cert before repeat that I had again between second and third year. And it was very strange because I was entering as well into a world I knew nothing about. So I just knew I wanted to go into the legal side of things. But I knew nothing about it. Like, I knew nothing about applying for jobs. We'd no family in that area. I'd no friends in that area. So I never forget sitting in a lecture theatre. I think it was in third year. No, it was final year. And one of the guys sat down beside one of my friends, and he said, have you done your application forms? And this was like maybe the second week in October. And I said, what are you talking about? And he was like, everybody's applying for jobs next year. And I was like, do you not do that next year?
Yeah.
Like, why are we applying for jobs now? We still have exams to do. We had another 2 lots of finals to do. And he says, no, you do that now, because you need to secure your job now for next year, so that you have a security to, you know, do your FE1s, etc. And I was like, I knew nothing about this. And I then went asking people questions, and who are you applying to? And there was only, I think there was a week till the deadline for all these application forms to go in, and I panicked. And I think I picked like 5 of the top firms in Ireland, basically, and applied to them in hope. and I had no clue what I was doing, literally no clue. One of my friends helped me fill out one of the forms, and I kind of used that as my blueprint. And then I got two responses that were like, thanks for your interest, but no thanks.
Thanks, but no thanks, yeah.
And I got 3 back inviting me for interview, which
Brilliant.
was incredible. But sure, I hadn't a clue.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I was like, okay, great. And of those, I was so nervous going into the interviews because I just didn't know what to expect. Like, I didn't know how to prepare. When I even look back now, when I was interviewing people in those positions, and I could see now the nervousness, and you pin all your hopes on this because in your head, especially when you've no experience of it, this is it. Like, you either secure your job today or you have no job ever again. And that's how your brain, or how my brain felt. So I was petrified. 2 of the interviews didn't go very well. The last interview, I remember going into it and I was so petrified, and then the air conditioning was really high in the room that we were in, so I was literally visibly shaking, to the point that one of the partners that was interviewing me said, "Are you okay? Like, do you want to take a minute just to get some water?" I said, "No, I'm actually freezing. Like, it's so cold in here." And he was like, "Oh, okay, sorry, let's get you a tea." And he was very lovely. But I just remember walking out of that interview and walking down to my car, and I burst into tears, and I rang my mum, and I just said that went awful. Like, I couldn't, I'd answered what I could, but I just didn't feel like it went well at all. And I just had this sinking feeling of hopelessness, and I didn't know any better. And my parents didn't know any better because they hadn't experienced it. And it was literally that hopelessness in your gut of, you've worked so hard, you're working so hard for all these exams, and you're never going to get a job in this area because it's not for you. You're not part of this world. And it was just so awful. And I just had to let it go and get over myself. And then, like, 3 weeks later, I got 2 letters in from the other 2 interviews to say, thanks for coming to see us, but it wasn't great. Maybe try again next year, kind of thing. And I said, I'll try next year and see how it goes. And then I got a phone call from William Fry on the Friday afternoon. I was in Dundrum Shopping Centre, and I think I would literally had given up all hope. And the phone rang, and I almost dropped the phone. Like, I was shaking, and I couldn't believe that I had been successful. And I'd never been so thankful for a phone call. And just that feeling of, oh my God, I did it. And I just thought, that's just amazing now. I have my letter. I just have to secure my FE1s, but I have my job. I have my training contract. And nothing could have prepared me for how I felt so elated in that moment, and how good you feel about getting that phone call, and how unbelievable it was, because then you hear about the stories, and it turns out that we were coming into, it was 2008.
Okay, lovely timing.
So nothing had fallen apart at that stage, but I knew that I had a plan, and my contract was due to start in 2009 if I passed my FE1 exams, and I had another year if I needed it. And the reason I'm kind of stuttering here is because I'll reflect back on that moment now in a few minutes when I explain to you, like, where you go from there, because you still have to go back and sit your finals. Yeah. So you have to. That's great. Park that. Now you really have to do well. Like, polish the last few exams off. During the heap of that, my grandmother had died as well, so you're trying to compartmentalize that as well. And then I said, like, right, I have to focus on the FE1s next, and we'll get straight into them. And I decided, through some form of madness, that I was going to sit the 8 FE1s in the first sitting. You have, like, so much opportunity to sit them. You don't have to sit all 8 together. It was completely madness. But I said, no, I think I can do it. And I booked myself in for the 8 FE1s and did my finals, studied for the summer, worked part-time, studied for the summer, went and sat my exam, got my degree. I got a first in my degree, and then I went in to do my FE1s in the late September, October. The world was falling apart at that point. but nobody really knew. It was September '08. And I sat the exams, and then I'd also taken a loan out to go travelling, because I said, I'll get these exams done, I'll do 6 months of travelling or a year, whatever we can do, and then I'll come back and start this fabulous career with
brilliant.
William Fry. And I'd obviously gone into the bank and showed them my lovely letter from William Fry, and I said, I have a job, give me money please so I can go travelling. And I took out enough that I could be paying off the loan while I was travelling, so I didn't have to work. And that was the plan, like. And then I went to Australia, my boyfriend at the time, and I'll never forget again getting that phone call of my results had arrived back to the house, and my mum was like, I said, read them all out to me, like I said, and read out the percentages. So with the FE1 exams, and even back to the traineeship, so just to reflect on that, like, what I didn't appreciate at the time, and I didn't even realise, is each of those firms that I'd applied to, and I didn't even realise that there were other firms I could have applied to, that kind of way, because I knew nothing. They could get anything from 1,000 to 1,500 applications.
Easily, yeah.
Never knew this, like, and I didn't realise the pressure I had put on myself, and, how lucky you could get to even get an interview. And then to even be selected then, to get past that stage, like, I was one of 20 trainees of the 1,000 that had applied for that year. And to even get selected from when you're only in your final year, let alone having sat in FE1, it was just incredulous, like. And it was just, I had no appreciation for it. And now looking back, I'm like, Jesus, what, like, I've put so much pressure on myself. I didn't realise I had so much more time to do that, or you just think it's the end of the world because you know no different. And experience can obviously teach you a lot, like. And that's what happened again then at the FE1, point in time. I sat the 8 exams, and my mum was reading out the results to me, and she's like, 65, 62, blah, 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 calling out the numbers for the scores. And I just remember her saying 47, and I was like, oh no. I couldn't believe it. As you had to pass the exams by 50%.
50 was the pass rate. Oh God.
And only 50% of the people that sit each exam will pass. So you're already going in with a 1 in 2 chance of failure.
Yeah.
And then, because that's how they score it, because they couldn't let so many through. Only so many people fit into black hole.
Yeah.
So I just remember just hearing the 47. And all the other scores just didn't matter to me. I just heard the 47, and I just said, I can't believe I failed it. And my now husband, but boyfriend at the time, was like, yeah, but you passed the other 7. I said, I still can't believe I failed that one. And I couldn't get my head off failing that one exam. And I just didn't register that I'd passed the other 7, like. And he was just like, he was incredulous at my reaction.
Yeah.
He could not talk me out of the devastation that I felt. And I said, I can't believe I have to go back and sit that exam now in March and resit it. And like, when I went back and resat it, I sailed it, that kind of way. But that moment in time was another moment of like, well, that's it now. It's the end of my life. And, I'm not going to be able to do my traineeship, and I'm never going to get these FE1s. And, oh my God, experience teaches you so much. Like, because you walk into, I got the exam. I, came back, worked the summer. I started with William Fry in September. I went straight into Blackhall, which is the Law Society of Ireland. And Jesus, did I have a moment of like, what was that all about?
Good.
Because there was about 400 people there, and I'd say 80% of them were people that were coming back from, having kids and families, or had worked as legal secretaries, had worked in other bars and restaurants and other careers for years, and had always thought or always wanted to go and practice as a lawyer, and needed to get the money up and needed time to sit the exams. And here I was thinking,
rushing through it all.
You literally, if you don't do that at this point in time, you'll never get ahead. And it was just that moment of realisation of, what was that all about? What was all that stress about? And that's the moment where I now, if I talk to anybody, who are thinking of a legal career, that I say to them, a legal career is a fantastic thing to have, and legal training, it will stand to you for life. It is one of the most enjoyable experiences. But you don't have to do it tomorrow. Like, you can take your time. You can go and travel, see the world, experience life, and bring that life experience with you in there.
Yeah.
You know, so that everything won't feel like the end of the world if it doesn't work out for you.
Very good.
It just is a new chapter, you know.
So that has been very interesting. But this is where it gets interesting for me, because if you just reflect on what you've just said, always wanted to do law, put yourself through college to study law, did repeats actually to get the course you wanted to do in law and business, went through a strenuous process to get an interview, to get a contract, put yourself through the FA1s at all one go, but now you're not in law.
No.
So tell us, so you start your training contract.
Yeah.
Bring us up to speed. What happened in your career from then to where you are today?
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is, you know, I'm so passionate about the law and studying it, and I really still do enjoy reading, you know, the law and reflecting on it. I absolutely loved my time at William Fry. Had a fantastic training experience there. Worked with brilliant people, and made some of my best friendships, you know, through that time, throughout Blackhall, and people that stand with me today, you know, I consider like some of my closest friends. I don't know what it was. It was like it's funny. People always say they fall into funds, because funds wasn't a career back in 2009. You know, the world was imploding. People weren't investing. So when I went into William Fry, actually my first seat there was in the investment funds team. And it was just something about the team and the practice area that just nabbed me. It was so interesting, and it was so different and diverse, and it was so new, that I really took to it. And something will always stick with me. Like, one of the senior associates at the time said to me, you know, when you come in here, especially into funds, don't feel like you're going to know this in a week or a month. It could take you 2 years just to get the basics, because it's like learning a new language. It has its own language, it has its own acronyms, its own regulations. It's completely devoid of what you would know from what you would have practiced in or learned in college or in Blackhall or whatever. So I approached it that way, and I really enjoyed it. And when you're in your training contract, you do different seats around the firm. You learn different things, litigation, etc. But my heart always went back to the team, really, that I worked with there, and I really loved working with that team. So I was very lucky to secure a full-time position in with the funds team. And again, I always say, like, you always have to spot the opportunity to move ahead. And I felt like that team, that practice area, would give you huge amount of opportunities, because I always had a businessy kind of mind. So there was a great opportunity there to learn new things, new skills, and just to move forward. And you're always learning, which is fantastic. So I've done 5 years there. I managed to get a secondment with one of our largest clients, and that was where I really opened up my eyes on seeing the other side of the table, because you spend all your years in practice, you know, speaking with clients every day, and you know, we were always very formal in our approach, and the correspondence and that we would send, you know, was very detailed, and it was legal advice. It had to be, you know, very structured in a certain way, and it was very weird to be on the other side of the table as a client and to see, you know, the client and how they operate when they receive those emails and they go, don't care. There, that's the answer. That's what I needed. You know, they like 80% of the email they don't even read. They were just like, there it is. That's what I needed to know. And you're just like, I was like, oh my God, it was a completely revelation for me. I was like, get to the point, give the clients what they need, and, you know, deliver the answer before anything else. And then if you want to add all the jargon, append it to the bottom and be like, these are all the laws and the reasons why you're doing the above, but this is the answer. This is what you need to know. And it just gave me a different experience as to how things work from a business perspective. So then when I went back into the firm, I was kind of at a crossroads. I went into a different practice. I was still in funds, but a different practice area in funds. And I was kind of at a point where I was starting to get exposure to clients and to pitches, and I really enjoyed that side of things, but I felt like I didn't understand the operational side of the industry that I was in. And I always say, like, when people ask me, like, what made you move out? I just felt like if I was to continue on the road I was in, I wouldn't be able to grow or give value to my clients in the best that I could do until I had gone out and actually understood the business better, because then I would be able to apply my legal knowledge better than just here's what the regulation says. So yeah, it was a point of inflection. I sat down and I had a really good think about it, and I said, you know what, I'm at a point now where if I don't do it now, I never will do it, or it will become too late. And it'll, you know, if you want to get into one of these businesses, if you keep going, you're going to go into senior, and that's not the level where you learn. So I needed to go. I needed to go then, if I was going to go.
Yeah.
And I just looked around online, and the name of a company popped up, and it was familiar to me because we had met these guys at an event, you know, a couple of months previous, and I said, these are familiar. Like, I remember them telling me at the time that they did something, you know, funsy. And I looked up the job spec, and it was for a management company, fund management company, independent management company in Dublin, and they were looking for a relationship manager. I'll be honest, at the time I didn't know what a management company did, and I didn't know what a relationship manager did. But when I read the job spec, I kind of was like, I could do most of that, and I could figure the rest out. But it would be a good starting block for me to kind of get exposure. And it was probably the best thing I could have done, because when you go in as a relationship manager anywhere, you are at the forefront. You're there with the clients, you're listening to their problems, and they want answers, if not immediately, like very close to immediately. So you need to know a little bit about everything to understand the question being asked, so that you can find the expert to get the solution. So that was literally like walking from the as they say, the pot into the flames, or the pan into the flames. Like, I literally was not prepared for that at all. But it was brilliant because it really challenged my brain. And I went into a company that was very small at the time. It was DMS was the previous name of what Waystone now is. And there was 30 people in the office in Dublin, and everybody knew everyone, and we were a family. And, you know, you would go and sit with the risk team, and you would sit with the ops team, and the investment management oversight team, and our chief investment officer, and you'd sit beside them and be like, a client has just rang me and they've asked me about this. Do you know what this is about? And they'd sit and explain it to me, and we'd walk through how they were going to fix it. So then I always, like, that's how you learn. Like, you'll know for the next time, the next client that asks you this, you're like, oh, I know what to do there.
Can I just ask on that though, in terms of the training piece that you've done and the legal stuff in the fund space, roughly percentage wise, how much of that were you able to leverage in the new role, or were you starting at zero in this relationship management role?
No, I leveraged everything.
Okay.
All of my learning, from just the knowledge of the product.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. Okay.
So I knew, you know, what the product was, what the rules around the product was, but I also had a great foundation experience of dealing with directors and boards, and even just my drafting skills. You know, clients really appreciated how I laid things out for them and simplified things. Boards really appreciated, you know, how I would present things in a memo format to them and explain what was happening to clients. And I also understood, because when I worked in William Fry, I sat in a lot of board meetings. I understood the dynamic of a board meeting and how it worked, and what the directors' roles were, and what my responsibility was to the directors. What did they need to know? So I brought a lot of that with me. It's not like I walked in on day one and just didn't know what a fund was, you know, that kind of, I think you'd struggle. I definitely brought a lot of that experience with me, but I hadn't been as exposed to clients in my previous role as I was now. Now I was Bambi in the headlights, you know. Anything could happen any day. Your inbox will literally, you've no idea what could happen on a Monday morning, Tuesday, Friday, anything could come in, and you had to be always prepared. And I really enjoyed that, because that's the bit where it starts to challenge you every day. And it's not that it wasn't like that in William Fry, it was, but it was always a legal problem. Whereas now it was an anything problem. and you had to learn fast. So it developed my understanding of the space that I work in a hell of a lot more than I probably would have got had I stayed in the legal world.
Timeline, when was this? When did you take that RM role?
In 2017.
So 2017, you move into the industry.
Yep.
You're now managing director. Talk me through that particular journey. How did that happen?
It was just opportunity presented itself time and time again, and it's not that it just laid itself out for me. I sought it out, you know. It's probably one piece of advice I give to anybody looking to move ahead in their career is spot the gaps. Where can you add value to any situation, be it a meeting, a call? Ask questions. You know, if your manager is doing something or working on something, you could say to them, like, what's going on there? Or what meeting have you got today? And oh, could I join that just to observe? And or can I help you with that? You know, can I make your week a bit easier by taking some things off you? And that's how you get in on things. So that's kind of how I worked my way through. I did the 2 years as the RM, and an opportunity presented itself. We were in a startup company. Everybody had to roll up their sleeves and get stuck in. We were looking to expand and grow. So we acquired an entity in the UK, and they looked for a volunteer to go over and help integrate really the team that we'd acquired there with our team, and set up the office really in the UK. My CEO at the time came to me and he said, would you be interested? And I said, absolutely not. And because I was about to get married and I just bought a house and a lot was going on in life at the time. And he was like, sure, like, give it a go. Like, and I just said, you know what? What's there to lose? If anything, I'm just going to learn something here. And I learned a lot. Like, it was a huge step up for me professionally. I probably didn't realise how much of a step up it would be. And I learned loads about myself then, about how much of a challenge it is to run a business like that, how hard it is to integrate teams. It's not that it's a hostile environment, but it's like, it's politically difficult because everybody is scared. You know, when two entities come together, you almost have a duplication of roles sometimes.
Yeah.
People, you know, don't know where they're going to fit in.
Yeah.
They're scared of what it's going to look like going forward. Everyone has their way of doing things. Everyone thinks the way they do it is right. So there's a lot of learning. One of the biggest regrets I had at the time, I remember when we moved into a new office, I was trying to bring the team together, and because I was leading the office at the time, they put me in my own room, and I lasted in that room for about 2 months. It was 2 months too long because I hadn't a clue what was going out on the floor. Yeah, you have to be out there in the middle of it listening. The first thing I would always look for in a good leader is someone that listens and observes, because you have to see where the cracks are, where the problems are, and where people are struggling. And you don't know that if you're in behind a door, you know. So I got myself out onto the floor fast, and I started listening and learning fast. And that was a big step up for me. And there was hard times, you know. I did the old faithful of ringing my mother, being like, I can't do this anymore. And her being like, yes, you can, pull yourself together, look how far you've come. And you kind of need that little pep talk every now and again to just give you that confidence back in yourself, because there's days when, you know, you just feel hopeless, or you just feel like you don't have the experience, or the world just doesn't feel like it's going in the same direction as you. And you just have to realise that maybe that day is just not for you, and step away from it and come back energized the next day, because if you keep grinding at yourself, you're just going to break. So that's when you need to step back, look at what's stressing you out, look at what the big problems are and what the small problems are, and where's the quick wins, you know. And especially when you're integrating teams like that, you know, a quick win just could be getting everyone out of the office for lunch and get them talking to each other, you know.
The listening piece you mentioned is interesting, because I would see that, or I would have had the preconceived idea potentially when I was younger, that a leader is someone who's in the ivory tower and they're super senior, they don't talk to anyone. But actually the best leaders I've come across, and actually we just did a podcast with Colin Marr, who'll be on, I think the episode will be really soon. He talked about the one thing that he thinks a good leader does is out on the floor talking to people and getting to understand their their issues that they have, the challenges they have, and how can he address them.
Yeah.
And the idea of a leader locking themselves away is actually not an effective leader, really. It's funny that you say the same thing.
Yeah.
I want to touch on something that you talked about, the whole piece you've covered off so far. You make it sound so simple, and we know it's not, but it sounds like there's always a desire within you to progress, develop, learn, be that a promotion, be that learning something new, taking on another task from your manager. Is that something that you think is learned throughout your career, or was that in the girl in Ballybrack?
I think it was always in me, to be honest. I always wanted to succeed. I always wanted to win. It's strange that I support Liverpool, actually, because for 30 years we went through we went through a bit of misery.
I'm sure that'll resonate with some of the listeners, not me.
But I always say it's an interesting one because, you know, it's always been ingrained in me. I always wanted to succeed. I always wanted to do well. I was terrible at sports. Like, again, I supported them, but really bad at sports. So I was always head in a book. Always wanted to get ahead, but I always wanted to learn and know more. My dad would probably always say I was a nuisance and my kids are paying me back in dividends now with the questions and the why and how and what's that. And I was that kind of child, and I was that kind of student in school. My teachers really hated me because I was constantly questioning, why is that happening? How is that happening? Learn more and more and more and more and more information. So nothing's changed. And even now, like, I'll always be a person that spots an opportunity. I'll always sniff out a deal. You know, I always want to see what's the best I can do for a situation. And that's even for my clients. You know, when I chat to my clients, I always say to them, is that the best? Is that what you want? Or could we do better? You know, or, you know, they say, you know, we want a fund delivered by X amount of time. I'm like, yeah, but we could probably do it faster, or we could probably do this better for you, you know, and always try and look for the best in situations. So I've always been that kind of person, I would say.
So what you've described in terms of your own approach to life, I think would be aspirational to some, definitely admirable, right? At what cost, though? Is there, when you look back over your career that's still thriving and will continue to thrive, no doubt, do you feel, because you've taken so many opportunities, you've progressed so well, you've amazing achievements across your CV, Noelle, do you feel you've missed out on anything, or you've had to forgo other things potentially?
They always talk about they always talk about the, you know, the work-life balance,
Yeah.
and is there a balance? And there's trade-offs. You do have to trade off certain things. Like, there may have been experiences, you know, trips that I probably couldn't go on, or friendships that, you know, I probably have neglected. I do my best as I can to keep in touch with friends, and I I love the fact that I think the circle of friends that I have around me, we're all on the same page, and we all get it that you don't have to see each other every day. You don't have to text every day. Like, I could see some of my closest friends twice a year, and as soon as we see each other, it's like we've seen each other yesterday. And we don't talk about, oh God, you know, where have you been, blah blah blah. It's like, it's just accepted. And that's, I think, if any professional woman particularly, and it could be the same for men, I obviously don't have the experience, but any professional woman to succeed in life and career, you have to have the support network around you that just understands. And I'm very, very lucky with the support network I have around me. I have a very supportive family. I have a very, like, my husband has the patience of a saint, and my father will tell you that. Like, he even said it to me when we were getting married. Like, my dad said to my husband to be, are you sure about this? You know, she can be a bit demanding, like, and it's just because I demand the best of everyone that's around me, you know. And I always say to my family and to my husband, you know, we're a team. This only works if we all pull together. So, you know, I have to travel for my job. That's accepted. You know, I could be on a flight tomorrow to London for a day, for 2-3 days. I could be in Luxembourg next week. You know, I have childcare that really helps for me, but my husband stands up, like, you know, and he'll do the nights and he'll get the kids ready for school or whatever. And, you know, it's funny, I remember traveling when we just had our first son, And I met a colleague in Luxembourg, and she had said to me, did you leave out the clothes, for the 4 days you're going to be away, and did you plan the meals? And I said, I packed my bag and I walked out and I wished him the best, like. And I said, and I expect him to do the same with me,
Yeah.
because my role is like, figure it out, because I could be dead tomorrow, like, and he'll have to figure it out, and he'd be more devastated then. So at least he's prepared for when I go, you know. And she's like, really? And I said, well, yeah. I said, we all have Google. Like I said, I don't have, a directory in my head
Yeah,
as
yeah,
to how
yeah.
kids function. Nobody gets the manual leaving the hospital. We all get Google.
Yeah.
And we all hope for the best. And you just hope you don't break it for the first while. Like, and after that, they become fairly resilient. So, and you learn that, over time. Like, that was a huge part of the changes for me. And probably for even like my changes in my career choices, because obviously I was in London working that time, and it was coming up to the pandemic. I found myself pregnant, and I just said, for myself and for the sake of my child and the travel and etc., it would be better for me to move home. And luckily I had an employer that really supported that, and we managed to find me a role back in Dublin, which worked out very well for me. I could then take my maternity leave at home and come back then into a new role that really actually suited me. So it worked out very well for me.
Bro.
But not everybody's that lucky, you know.
True. Adjacent topic to what we've just discussed, I want your thoughts on, if you were to look, Noelle, across your peers at Waystone, at your level, look at the boards you faced off to when you're in law, your time in law, what are your thoughts on gender balance at a senior grade?
Yeah.
And then what advice would you give, maybe there's a graduate listening now and she really wants to get into law, or there's someone who's been in banking for 5, 6, 7 years, that's not going well for them, they really want to progress. What are your thoughts on how to get to the next level and in general on gender balance in the workplace?
It's a great question, because like when I was going to board meetings 10 years ago, the balance was always male heavy, very male heavy, like I was very fortunate to work at a time with very strong female mentors. The women that I worked for were just like, and still are, phenomenally strong women, and they taught me how to stand up for myself, but in a good way. So I always say there's a way to knock through that glass ceiling without completely smashing it. You can chip away at it. There's definitely been a change now in industry than probably 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. We're starting to definitely see the boards rebalance. I think more needs to be done there. And the central bank are certainly helping that from an Irish perspective, and I know the same as I think in Luxembourg. Unfortunately, it's taken reform and them to almost force through this change. So I know when we're setting up a new fund, for example, and we go to the central bank and we go to register and we give the names of the directors, they seek a balance on the board by not just gender, but by experience and skill, and they want to see that DEI impact on the board, and they want a proper balance on the board. And the different perspectives that people can add are just so undervalued at times, and sometimes it does take a bit of a knock on the floor or on the table. Like, and even when I started with what is now Waystone, like I remember when we used to go in at the start, I was very new to the organisation, and we used to have a weekly meeting, and there was a time when I was potentially the only woman at the table, and it wasn't thought of. People just didn't consider it.
Does that happen today still?
It does, yeah, it does, and it does in a lot of companies, I think. And it's sometimes people forget, and it's not done deliberately. It's just by chance of who was around that day, that kind of way. I think we're doing better. I think Waystone as a company are doing better. They're trying to, but I'd never say people shouldn't be hired for the sake of being hired into a position because of their gender. But I do think that when they are looking to hire people into senior position, they're a little bit more balanced about it now. And maybe a few years ago, I would have been guilty of the same. You'd say to yourself, like, do they have family and how does that impact things? And I've learnt myself that if you want something to work and work well, you make it work.
Very
And
good.
that's probably, if I'm looking even at hiring now, I even said to someone recently, I'm like, find a mother who is coming back to work and you will find someone that will get a job done well, efficiently, and on time, because they are efficient. They will make sure things are done on time because they have other things to do, that kind of way. So I always laugh at that. But when you're looking at hiring now, and even when I'm looking at hiring myself, you should nearly almost be planning for roles, if you can, as best you can, ahead of time. And start man-marking, but you know what I mean, the people that you think would be suitable.
Yeah.
So like, there's people that are in junior positions now that I could see working really well in certain positions in time. So you start talking to them now, meeting them for coffees, and working with them and understanding where their goals are and their aspirations are, and almost moulding them to a role that you think would really suit them. And it might not, like they might say to you, it's not for me, but you're hiring in people that you could nurture and give a good opportunity to.
Very good. Noelle, what a story.
Thanks.
I'm not even halfway through your career.
I know.
You've another 20, 30 years to give us. And that's been very enlightening, I would say. Thank you so much for talking us through those bits and pieces. I want to wrap up with a couple of quick fire questions.
Yeah.
Some you have seen in advance, some you have not.
Okay.
So they'll be honest questions, hopefully straight from the heart. Just think of the first answer that comes into your mind, and maybe give us a little bit of context as to why. So your thoughts on work from home or in the office?
Hybrid
is ideal for you. Okay,
Yeah.
Very good. When you're doing training, formal classroom training or on the job?
Again, I think a bit of both.
A bit of both?
Yeah, I do think that small bit of formal training can help guide you, but I do think you get most of your skills just being on the job.
Very good. Apple or Android?
Android.
Coppers or Café on Sen?
Neither. Probably more of a Café on Sen person now.
Sure.
But we all love a bit of crack and coppers.
Spice Girls or Oasis?
Both.
Oh, that was a very politically correct answer. I'll accept it.
Yeah.
North side or south side?
Oh, I'm south-sided by heart.
Fair enough. Bambino or Milano?
Oh, Bambino.
Good. Aer Lingus or Ryanair?
It depends on where I need to get to.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there, Noelle. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
There you have it. That was my conversation with Noelle White, Managing Director at Waystone. I have a lot of time for Noelle, and actually, although we're completely different careers, I identify a lot with her journey. I mean, she trained to be a lawyer, she was a successful lawyer, and then, or solicitor, not sure what the terminology is, and then switched into the current role at Waystone. And myself, I was a director at Deutsche Bank for a number of years and moved from banking into recruitment. So lots of similarities. I felt like I had a really good chat with her, really good connection, really resilient lady. And yeah, I really enjoyed that conversation with her. So that's it for this episode of Notions and Promotions. We have some amazing guests lined up, just as good as the guests that you've previously heard. So stick around, stay tuned, and I'll see you on the next one.